Good evening. Just muting all. Okay. Okay, so we were in the sort of began dipping our toes into the sugya of Nechemia, and as we said in the last year, Nechemia is, even though the halachas of Nechemia are somewhat similar to Muktza, nonetheless it's not fundamentally a Muktza sugya. It's really a sugya about Kelim. Muktza is a svara in Hachana, whereas Nechemia is a sugya of all Kelim. And the Brisa said that originally only Shloisha Kelim were mutter b'shlamshas b'Shabbos. And Tosfos already asked, what about other commonly used Kelim? And Tosfos said it's turning on whether they're b'nei kibble or not. And we spent quite a lot of time on Sunday trying to work out what b'nei kibble meant and why b'nei kibble should make a difference. Whether they have whether it's a keli that has a that holds things or doesn't hold things doesn't seem to make a difference. We had a semi-extensive discussion about whether the point of Tosfos was really to do whether they were clay achila or not. Tosfos doesn't mention whether these are utensils used for food or not. Is it possible that's what Tosfos meant? Nonetheless, not. We would discuss on Sunday. The Ritva, however, is a little clearer. The what we call the Miyuchas Ritva, the Ritva Yishonim, the original Ritva, which is probably the run. He says that it's told on whether Nasim Bossis L'Dov HaMuta, whether they're made a Bossis for Dov HaMuta. Now that's in a sense a borrowed terminology. There isn't really a concept of Bossis L'Dov HaMuta. There's a concept of Bossis L'Dov HaAsur. Something that becomes a bosses, something that's also, or bosses of also for mutter, something that's a bosses, something that's also mutter at the same time, as we saw. But this is he's saying a svara that if the keli is a means to something that's completely mutter, like food, which isn't bichlal the takana of Nechemia of takanas kelim, then that would be then such a keli would be obviously mutter, and that the Mishnah doesn't, the Brisa doesn't list. That's what the Ritva says. And finally, that's what the Miyuchas Ritva says. That's what the Ram says. Finally, there's the what we nowadays call the Ritva, the Chedushi Ritva HaChadoshim, the new Ritva. And the Shitta Ram also says something. I don't think I've printed that. No, just the new Ritva. He says that the point is that it's listing Kelim, which are sometimes used for Heta and sometimes used for Issa. But Kelim which are only ever used for Heta, like cups and bowls and so on, and plates. That's pashut, that it's mutter. That's obvious. That's what the Ritva Hadash says. It's interesting that svara because Nechemia is bepashtus not really a svara in Heter and Issa. When Nechemia is a Gezeiras on all Kelim, it's not really the point whether it's used for Heter or Issa. Nechemia asks Kelim which are not regularly used, even though they're only used for Heta. It seems he's saying a svara of a combination. A keli that's not regularly used, Nechemia asad. A keli that is regularly used, if it's only ever used for Heta, then it's mutter. Whereas if it's sometimes used for Heta and sometimes used for Asa, then Nechemia included it in his Gezeiras. Not because of a svara of Hachana, L'chora, because a keli which is used for Heta and Issa is Muchan. Because it's Muchan, Halacha, where once Nechemia is unravelled, in our universe, post the unraveling of Nechemia, a keli which is used for mutter and asa, if it's used for rov heta, is called muchan. It's muchan on Shabbos. Why should it not be muchan? It's used for heta and issa. Nonetheless, in Nechemia's universe, in the world where we're asking kelim, if it's sometimes used for heta, sometimes used for issa, Nechemia was worried that would lead to a malacha, and therefore he asked it. Similarly, a non-todeh keli he asked. If you have a double whammy, if you have tartar l'tevusa, you have both positive factors, it's todeh and only used for Heta, then Nechemia would agree it's mutter. That's what emerges in the svara. I'm elaborating this since I'm touch and comes with this. I don't really know exactly what all this means, but that's what comes out in the sort of maths of the Ritva, the Ritva. Is that agreed by everyone? Does everyone see that? Manage to see that in the Rishonim? Yeah, you managed to have a look at the Ritva? Yeah, excellent. Okay. So that's what I have to say. I guess the only other keli to mention is sucking. Tosus talked about bowls and plates and and so on, spoons. Someone asked about forks, which we said was a relatively modern invention. Sucking a knife is really the Mishnah. The Bryce really says sucking shel shulchan, a table knife. And I printed on the source sheets that the Shartzian really spelled this out. So after Bachroin and Muska, it's printed on the bottom page 1 in the source sheets. The Shartzian on the Mishnah Berurah, you've got Kaf Gimel, I'm sorry. It's going in Shulchan Aruch Shin Ches Sif Daled. He says, "After Bachroinim Muzka Sakin Cotton Shalosh Shulchan Lav Dafka Hu V'Lishn Gemara Noktu." But Enochanami, it's also any other commonly used. Yeah. Okay. So all cutlery anyway seems to be mutter. That seems to be what comes out.
Is it a much bigger knife? Is that why it's separately listed?
Yeah. So it would seem. It seems it's either bigger or sharper or something like that. It's a specialist implement. Because it is used it's not used just for regular cutting of food, chopping of food, which is a simple knife. That's what it would seem. Yeah, I mean, in this says there's 3 separate kingdoms. Yeah. I mean, Rashi calls it an Ismail. He even calls it. Is that right? Rashi says, so Ismail is like Ismail Shamila. It seems a specialist knife of sorts. Yeah, I don't know if it's bigger or more sharper. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's what comes out in the sugya.
Are we understanding that quite common use? Wouldn't seem to be that common that you'd actually, a knife on the table be using the whole time for various things, but for splitting apart things, you can.
Right.
Wasn't the bagel that standard food?
Yeah, it seems it was a standard food. The Gemara in Ross talks about it being zon, that it's nutritious and it's like it seems it was very standard food. I don't know. And they used to store the dates and Gezeiras in these sorts of cheese, these pressed together bundles. We saw that also in Gemara Brachas. Seems it was sorry, quite.
Basically, the way they were like up.
Yes, yeah. Look, I always think of it as cheese circles or cheese wheels. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I mean, Max, I don't really have a great answer to it. Evidently, it's called Tote. It must have been a frequent enough part of their daily living. I know.
As well as an example, I think that's what we found.
Yes, in Einem Tzias, that's also one of the classic examples of a lost object. It seems everyone was walking around with pressed dates as I guess actually on a more serious note, I guess they're very nutritious. The Gemara tells us that brachas, and they dry well, so they last through winter, and they don't go moldy. So they're useful foods when you're in an environment where you don't have fridges and freezers, and you're dependent on the harvest. They're good food to have. That's around the whole time. Yeah, that's why they used to press them together. They used to dry them and press them together. Yeah. Okay. So we've dealt with the first of our questions really on the sugya, which is what's the point of these 3 kelim? What's unique about them? The second question is what exactly is mutter about them? And really, this will lead us into the discussion, which I began emerging from the Rishonim as we were learning them. The Gemara later, when it talks about the unraveling of Nechemia, it says that the most mutter degree of use of a keli is mechamal atel. In other words, you have a keli which is completely asa, then you have something which is mutter l'sorkuf and then you have something which is mechamal atel. We'll look later at exactly why there would be a problem with mechamal atel. But the point of mechamal atel is you're not moving it for the use of the keli, because not the sorkuf for the sorkuf. You're just moving it for protecting the keli itself. So does that mean that mechamal atel is mutter, but a completely unnecessary movement is asa? Or is mechamal atel another way of saying an unnecessary movement? So Is there a fourth category not mentioned in the Gemara, which is a completely unnecessary movement? That's really the shaila. Is Muhammad Lasal Dafka, or is just the way of saying not L'Torcha for the Tzorech Makomi? And I want to point out, there's not. It took me. This is sort of obvious, and maybe it's obvious to everyone else, but it took me a little bit of time to get my head around this. There's really three separate shilas, three separate scenarios where we can ask this shaila. Scenario number one is with the kli shemelachta leheta. In other words, something that was originally included, or I should go really in reverse order. The most simple scenario is the mitchila omru shloisha kelim netolim b'Shabbos. Kelim which were all along mutter, i.e. never included in Nechemia. What would the halacha be with them? Things which aren't kelim at all and therefore mutter, like oichlim, food. And finally, the klishim lachta which was originally in Nechemia's Gezeiras, and then later was removed from Nechemia, unraveled, as Nechemia's Gezeiras was unraveled. So these are not one set of shilas, really. And yes, and klishim lachta Rabbi Zobin, yeah, it's a good addition. Okay, so in brief, in the takana of Nechemia, let's put your point to a fair point, but let's not think about Hilchos Muktza, just think about Gezeiras Nechemia of Kelim. We have three categories. We have Oichlim, which are completely removed from the Gezeiras of Nechemia because they're not Kelim at all. Then we have the Gimel Kelim, the Shlosha Kelim, Netonim b'Shabbos, which are Kelim, but were not part of Nechemia's Gezeiras seemingly. And then we have Kli Shemelachta Leheta, which was part of Nechemia's Gezeiras, but then was unraveled. So in all those cases, really, we need to ask this question about whether they're netolin for no tzorech whatsoever. So all I want to do really is just try and work through the scenarios, and again, and just see what the Rishonim say. So in the again, I think the source sheets were fairly. I hope the source sheets were fairly self-explanatory. But in the this was the second set of source sheets I gave out. In the run on the Rif and on the Chiddushei Haran, he says that you're not allowed to move Shelo L'Torech Klal. You can only move it Mechama L'Tel. And the Tiyuk is because the Gemara says that. The Gemara says Chosri V'Tiyu Mechama L'Tel. They allowed you to move it Mechama L'Tel, where there is a Torah in order to protect it. It doesn't say you're allowed to move it for no need whatsoever. The run in the Chidushim adds in a raya from Kelim and so on. We won't go into that. We haven't we sort of haven't yet looked properly at that sugya. But anyway, he brings a raya from Kelim. But either way, just the simplest understanding of the Gemara is it says that it's Muslim Mechama L'Tel, so the run takes on that's a good diuk. Yeah, when we withdrew it, we looked at it, but yeah. So that's what the run says. In the Chidushim that miyuchosim l'ran, the Chidushim that were initially ascribed to the run, but we now think isn't the run. And one of the reasons is because he contradicts that which the run says on many occasions, including here. He says not like that. And then says Mechama L'Tel Kolome B'chti. So he translates Mechama B'Tel as B'chti, as for no reason whatsoever. So the Chidushim Michos in the run seems to understand is that it's even mutter l'sorech shelo l'sorech klal. That's what I was bringing out in the sources. So again, I'm not going to go through these inside, but if you look at the run on the Rif and the Chidushei Haran, they say explicitly, Gemara says Mechama L'Tel is asa, im is mutter, that means no need not. Whereas the Chidushei Haran Amichosim translate Mechama L'Tel as b'chti. B'chti means for nothing, for no purpose whatsoever. That's in translation b'chtei for no purpose whatsoever. So he seems to allow it. He seems to allow it completely, and there's other places in the Miochas L'Ran where he says the same thing. Yeah.
Why do we assume that moving it done would be on that side of the extreme and not on the other side of the extreme? So on the other side of Kufa, for example.
Because you're saying, why should it be more asa?
Yeah.
Because there's even less of a reason to move it. Why should you move it? What would be the need to move it? If Nechemia thinks that stum moving Kelim is asa, then good, they unraveled it to allow it for tzorach. But who says they allowed it for no tzorach whatsoever?
Yeah, but I suppose that is a question is potentially, if you wanted to save it to do a malacha the next day, maybe that is worse because your kavanah is to do a malacha the next day as opposed to just absent-mindedly moving it for no purpose.
Okay, so you're saying a very fine point, and you're actually asking two questions or 2 points. So again, just to make this clear, so we're assuming that b'chti is worse because they allowed Nechemia for tzorach, for some tzorach, but who says they allowed it for zero tzorach? Anton was asking me or spelling out your question, Danny, two questions. Number one, maybe Mechamal Etzel is a type of hachana, because you're saving it for tomorrow because you can't use it for today. Number two, maybe you're moving it, maybe moving it purposelessly is a type of misasek, because a sort of non-engagement whatsoever. That could be a second question. So taking the questions one by one, the svara that Mechamal Etzel is a type of hachana makes sense with the klisha melachtoi le'isa. But here we're talking about klisha melachtoi leheta. So you're saying a good svara, why should Mechamal Etzel be mutter? Let's ask a question. Why is Mechamal Etzel osa with a klisha melachtoi le'isa? So a good candidate for the answer would be, as per Adam, because since it's useless on Shabbos, trying to save the keli is preparation for chol. Now, you could quibble over that question, that answer, because it's not really useless for Shabbos, because it's mutter l'serech gufay. Even a klisha melachtoi le'isa is mutter l'serech gufay. Okay, but you could say since its primary purpose is to be used for an osa use, therefore it's called a hachana of sorts. But here we're dealing with klisha melachtoi leheta, and that's why Mechamal Etzel is mutter, because it's no hachana element to it. In which case, the chti is less of a tzorach. So if you're moving it for no tzorach whatsoever, the chol is a kal v'chomer, or not kal v'chomer, but you have no raya. We unravel Nechemia to allow for tzorach. Who says we unravel Nechemia to allow for no tzorach? So that's the pashut of the Gemara. Then there's a second story which I didn't find in any of the Rishonim and almost in none of the Achronim also, which is maybe moving something for no purpose isn't a proper engagement with it at all. It's just a non-engagement. It's just like fiddling. It's just moving things around without any engagement whatsoever. I found that Avnei Nezer said such a svara. A little later, when we get to practical halacha, I'll revisit this Avnei Nezer's svara. But for now, this is the assumption of the poskim that they unravelled Nechemia for a need, but for a needless case, who says they unravelled it? The Chedushim and Yechosim the Ran says yeah, Mechamal Etzel means useless, and the other Rishonim say not. So that's klisha melachtoi leheta.
Gavra, which is Gufo and Como, and which is actually worried about the object itself. That's what the distinction between Mechamal Etzel is, rather than kiss and kiss.
Spell out your point, sorry.
I'm just wondering whether a distinction between, we try to segregate what the intention of Hamlet said. And I just wondered whether, because the need of the person, he needs the space or he needs the object, he needs to use it, and that's why he's able to use it. But the Hamlet say we can't use it because he's only concerned about the object.
Oh, you're explaining why would Mechamal Etzel be osa for at least Melachot Issa? Yeah, that's a very good svara. Also a good svara. Yeah, 100%. I wasn't really planning yet to get up to that. In other words, you're right, because it's attached to Adam's point. Why with the Klisha Melachot Issa is Mechamal Etzel osa? So you could say because of a type of hachana. I'm using it for tomorrow. You could say because it's not for a need. We're now, both those points are true. We're now going on the opposite way around, though, which is for Kelim where Mechamal Etzel is mutter, i.e. Klisha Melachot Leheta or Eichlum, whatever. Does that mean that for no need also is allowed? And many of the Rishonim assume the Gemara says Mechamal Etzel is allowed because it's some needs, but no need not. And Masechet Shabbat says not like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's with respect to Kisha Melachto the Heta. In other words, Kelim which were included in the Gezeiras of Nechemia, but were later allowed. Then we have second class, which is Oichlin and Kisva Kodesh, okay, which the Ron explicitly says they were never in the Gezeira of Nechemia, and therefore he says they are allowed to be used Shelo L'Tzorech Klal. So that's scenario number 2. And according to that, Oichlin were never included in the Gezeira of Nechemia. That's what he says. They were never Bechal in the Gezeira. They're not Kelim, and therefore, obviously, why should there be any Isra at all? Why can't you move them just stum for no reason? Bechti. Why should there be any Isra at all? That's with respect to Oichlin. Then we have scenario number 3. Yes.
Is it because they're Kelim, but they can't be Matame? I mean, what's the reason why? Because they are still dealing. They would still be. Are they Kelim?
Yeah, so Kitzur Kodesh Kelim, a book is a Keli. Nonetheless, for whatever reason, Nechemia excluded them all along from his Gezeira, and therefore the Ran says it's the same as Oichlin.
Why? I mean,
Out of protection of Kisva Kodesh, didn't want to make the Muktza at all. They didn't want Kisva Kodesh. Yes. So because of their Kedusha, and in order to facilitate Talmud Torah or the like, they were never included in the Gezeiras. Yeah.
Maintains the Shabbat spirit.
Could probably something like that. Yeah, they're not. Even though so Nechemia's Gezeira ultimately comes down to not wanting over engagement with Kelim, and Kisva Kodesh is different. Yeah. Yes, they're never included in the Gezeira, or maybe as a protection for them. Okay, so that's scenario number 2, and then scenario number 3 are these Gimel Shlosha Kelim Nitolin, Kelim which are Kelim, but the Brisa tells us with the 3 exceptions to the Gezeira of Nechemia, and the Shilta Geborim and others say that therefore by logic they should also be mutter even Shelo L'Tzorech Klal, because they were never bichlal the Gezeira of Nechemia. That's the logic, right? If we said that Oichlin, the Ran tells us that Oichlin was never bichlal the Gezeira of Nechemia, and therefore even for no reason at all they were excluded. Even for no reason at all you can move them. These Kelim also you could argue were never in the Gezeira of Nechemia, and therefore should be excluded entirely from his Gezeira, and therefore you shouldn't be allowed to move them. You should be allowed to move them for no reason whatsoever. That's a logic you could say, and that logic is expressed by the Shilta Geborim. Yeah.
I just from one thing that we discussed last week, that is the Nechemia's Gezeira, was that a strengthening of Muktza, or was it the invention of Muktza in the first place?
I don't know either of them. It's its own Gezeiras, even though it behaves somewhat similarly to Muktza. Muktza is about Hachana, and it has perhaps sources in the Torah as per the beginning of Masechet Shabbat, either yes or no, but it's a Hachana Svara. Nechemia is nothing to do with Hachana. It's not about Hachana, it's just about Kelim.
But Muktza was Muktza well before that.
Either before or after, whatever the historical timeline was. The proto-Muktza may have origins in the Torah, like Nolad, something which wasn't even in existence on Erev Shabbos, is not Mukhan. But the extension of Muktza is what we call Muktza, is to do with the preparedness of Kelim for use. And Nechemia has nothing to do with preparedness. Even the word Muktza is wrong. Muktza means non-Hachana. That's the very translation of the word. And Nechemia is not as far in Hachana.
Interesting to build a classical art school books start off with Nechemia as being sort of your
right. So in slang we've merged them all into one halacha, but technically Nechemia is about Kelim, irrespective of their hachana. A klisha melachot leheta is muchen, but nonetheless Nechemia said disaster. Yeah, like treif, like Erevin, yeah. Hilchas Erevin putting up to us. There's a lot of sorts of slang. Yeah.
Well,
So it would
does
appear.
that affect the argument? If it was never forbidden in the first place, this is about the three exceptions to the Gezeira. But there's never anything about them not or forbidden or anything.
Well, whether there's Muktza or not, these happen to be Kelim Shemalachta Leheta, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of Hilchos Muktza, the Kelim Shemalachta Leheta. In terms of Gezeiras Kelim, that's the Brisa tells us they're not included in Gezeiras Kelim. So B'Pashtus, they were never included in the Gezeira of Nechemia, and therefore, just like food is mutter to move Shalom Tzorech Klal, these should also be mutter to move Shalom Tzorech Klal. That's the Ran's logic. That seems like a strong svara. Yeah. I think I'm going to pause here because I want to go into the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. Should we try just to try and get to the Rambam quickly? Yeah, okay, let's we'll just see if we can put it up in the next few minutes. Okay, so that's the Ram's logic. If everyone can have a look at the Rambam inside, I just put it in the sheets. The Rambam is clearly not like this. Let's have a learn at the Rambam. The Rambam is a little confusing. The Rambam Hilchos Shabbos Perek Kafei Halacha Aleph. He says Yesh Kli Shemalachta Leheta v'hu Kli Shemutar Lasis B'Shabbos Davar Shenaseh B'Chol. There's a Kli that's Malachta Leheta, which means you can use it for on Shabbos like you use whatever you use it for Chol. Kegoyin. And now he gives examples of l'chora of things which are exclusions from Nechemia totally. Going kaislish by or ka'ora lechel bo v'sakin lachtiv by basa or pas v'kadam niftzoi by egozim kiyot of him. So he lists kelim which are they're mishtamish todeh for oichlim and they're mutter. Then he says v'yesh kli shemlachtel issa v'yu akli she'asa lasis by b'shabbos davar shenasa by. A kli that's used for something you're not allowed to do on Shabbos could go machteshes or echaim, grinding things and so on, which you're not allowed to use. Then in Halacha Kimmel he says, this is important Halacha for our purposes. Kol kli shemlachtel heta. Bein hoya shel eitz, oy shel cheres, oy shel even, oy shel mateches, mutter l'tal to b'Shabbos. Any kli from nachton heta you're allowed to use on Shabbos. Bein mishul atzmoi shel kli, that's what we call sorich glufay. Bein sorich mekoymoi, bein sorich glufay. Bein mishul atzmoi shel kli means the thing it's muchan for. Bein sorich mekoymoi, bein sorich glufay. The whole kli from nachton issa. Bein hoya shel eitz, shel cheres, oy shel even, mishul mateches, mutter l'tal to b'Shabbos. Bein sorich glufay means sorich mekoymoi, mishul atzmoi shel kli asa. So the Rambam doesn't say that you are allowed to move things for. Sorry, Bein Bishvil Atzma means Chamalatel. I'm sorry, I messed up the reading of the Rambam. The Rambam says the Klishim Nachta Heta is Mutter Chamalatel, also Gufay, also Mekomer. Klishim Nachta Issa is only Mutter L'Sorich Gufay and Mekomer, but not L'Sorich Atzma, which is what we call Chamalatel. So the Rambam seemingly only allows Klishim Nachta Heta to be moved l'tzorech atzmai, i.e. mechamal l'tel, but not b'chdi. That's the seeming pashtus of the Rambam. Now with kli shemalachta leheta, okay, that's in line with the Ran and many of the other Rishonim we saw. That was what we called scenario number 1. That kli shemalachta leheta, you can only move mechamal l'tel, but not for no need at all. But the Rambam includes in this category also halacha aleph, which is kois and ka'ara and a sakin, a table knife. So he's clearly including in one category even the Shlosha Kelim and the Tana B'Shabbos. And even those, he says, you can only move L'Tzorech Atzmam, i.e. Mechamal L'Tel, but not B'chti, not for no purpose whatsoever. So the Rambam seems to paskin that even the Shlosha Kelim and the Tana B'Shabbos can only be moved Mechamal L'Tel, but not B'chti. That seems to be a good diuk in this Rambam. Who doesn't create a new category. La halacha, I'll just finish with it. The point is, though, what's the svara in this? If these were never included in the Gezeira of Nechemia, why should it be also to move them b'chti? Right, that's the whole logic. The logic was then they're kelim, but they were never included in the takon of Nechemia, and therefore why shouldn't they be allowed to move b'chti? The Ran says that you're allowed to move oichlim b'chti, so why shouldn't you move these b'chti? The answer must be that actually the Gezeira of Nechemia was over all kelim, even these kelim. It was just these kelim he allowed mechamal l'tel, but he didn't allow them completely, and that was never unraveled. That's the chora, what you have to say. That even someone asked me last year, were these 3 kelim included in the Gezeira of Nechemia? The pashtus is not. They were never included in the Gezeira of Nechemia. They're exactly like food items, and therefore the nafkamina would be that if you can move them b'chti. The Rambam learns that you can't move them b'chti, and therefore it must be he understands they were included in the Gezeiras of Nechemia. I don't see a way of avoiding this. Since we're whizzing and just trying to finish, I'll just conclude by saying the Shulchan Aruch paskins this way. But the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Ches paskins again printed it. Kli shemalachta leheta mutter l'tal telefina einu l'sorich hakli shem yishava yignov. That's mechamal l'tel. So this is on page 2. You can move a kli shemalachta leheta even for the only for the tzorech of the kli in case it breaks. That's chamer l'tel. But it's if it's shelo l'tzorech klal, it's also l'tal today. Which means that halacha l'maisa, there's a major breach in halacha that goes on, which is a non-muktza keli, nonetheless can't be moved for no purpose whatsoever. So certainly, if it's a kli shemlachta leheta, but not one of these category of shalosh kelim, you can't move it for no purpose whatsoever. And maybe even if it's a kli, but the shalosh, the gimel shalosh kelim netanim b'Shabbos, according to the Rambam, even those shouldn't be allowed to be moved for no purpose whatsoever. And this is how the Mishnah Berurah leaves it. This is how the halacha turns out. Now on Shabbos you can't move kelim. You can't just fiddle with kelim for no purpose whatsoever. I'll put in the WhatsApp group B'nai Neder and Avnei Neder. Avnei Neder was from a very important postscript in Poland before the war, who wrote very, very, very important Hilchos Shabbos. And he says about this halacha, he says, Rov ha'olam einam nisharim b'zeh. Most of the olam aren't nishar b'zeh. Ela zulas halomzim, besides the lomzim. So there's a few learned people are makbid on this, but most people don't keep this halacha. So he writes a limud zechus on the practice of the olam, and he basically says two svaras. Number one, he says, look, this is a machlokas rishonim. We see the rishonim that say that bechti means bechti, that you can move it for lo so klal. Number two, he says Adam svara, that maybe this is a type of misasek. If you're moving it bechti, you're not engaging with the keli at all, and therefore the svara flips on its head, and it should be more mutter, not less mutter. He says, I wrote this as a limud zechus. In other words, the limud zechus is when we learn merit on a common practice. There's an area of halacha where people are makel on. It's not quite clear why. It seems against the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam. But limud zechus means what would be the justification of this? And then he finishes off minhag Yisrael Torah, the minhag Yisrael is Torah. So even though the Shulchan Aruch says this is asa, and the Mishnah Berurah says this is asa, I mean the Avnei Neder, the Beital is contemporary of the Mishnah Berurah. So even though the classic poskim would say this is asa, nonetheless the minhag Yisrael is not to be makbid on this. So if you want to be makbid, if you're a loy maid and you want to be makbid, very good. But the minhag Yisrael is not to be makbid in this area, and to go with the logic that once the keli is not muktza, it's not muktza, even shalom l'tzorech klal. That's the Avnei Neder. I didn't get a chance to. I literally only saw it a few minutes ago, but a few minutes later, I'll put that on the WhatsApp group. Good. I wish everyone a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.